One of the most common mistakes I've noticed across all the books I started reading, but never finished, is that the first chapter wasn't well crafted. Something in it makes me lose excitement and view the paper in my hands as something more suited to wrapping sandwiches or, worse, wrapping corpses. What are the worst mistakes you can make in the first chapter? And what are the things we need to focus on when writing the first few pages of our book to make sure the reader won't tear the pages out and turn them into paper planes to annoy the neighbors? Let's start with the major flaws I've encountered in the books I didn't finish. First, unnecessary padding. This is the thought that comes to my mind when I encounter a book that feels bloated from the very start with pointless filler in the first chapter. The reader hasn't yet become attached to the characters or grasped a brilliant perspective on showcasing legendary, mythical events. The first chapter is not the right place for filler, which refers to sentences that simply fill up your narrative and give it its final length. Filler could be describing a character's dimensions or emotions, and while all that is fine, the problem arises when the description becomes too long and turns into pointless words. I recall a time when an author described a reception hall for a page and a half and kept going. I threw the book, the chair I was sitting on, and decided to contribute to a project aimed at annihilating the planet, which will launch in 2025. Please pray for our success, folks. Second, information vomit. It's never right to drown the reader in information about how the world was formed, how the heroes got their powers, their detailed backstories, or the political system of the place before you've even made the reader care about the characters. And the worst part, spoiling the ending before you even begin. Information is different from events, and part of the art is to weave information naturally into the events, not the other way around. But before continuing with the video, don't forget to subscribe to support and encourage us to keep going. Third, I tried really hard to finish this highly praised book that everyone swore could stir emotions, but the only feeling I had was a desire to burn it. No matter how amazing you are at writing, or how knowledgeable you are about language, never, ever fall into the trap of turning the first chapter into a showcase for your linguistic prowess. Fourth, detailing boring, routine events for no reason. If you can't blend the routine event with something central to the character or an important upcoming event, don't bother narrating the hero's dull day. Don't talk about how they woke up on the left side of the bed or other such mundane details unless it's tied to something critical to the plot or a character trait. Fifth, turning mystery into blindness. I'm going blind from all the things I don't understand, can't see, and that aren't explained. Let's agree, mystery is great, but with moderation. You need balance when writing. If everything in your book is unclear, the suspense can turn into boredom, and the reader might start imagining the mysterious ways they're going to kill you and how no one will ever find your body. I've warned you. 6. A chapter that's either too long or too short. Pay attention here. A long first chapter is one crammed with too many events, where more than two main characters are introduced, with descriptions of their dimensions and names, and sometimes even parts of their backstories. If you jump between scenes more than 3 or 4 times, you risk overloading the reader with too much information right from the start. The purpose of the first chapter is for the reader to get a feel for the main characters, but not all of them, catch a glimpse of the main conflict, and get a brief idea of the setting. And it should end with a surprise that makes the reader eager to continue to the second chapter. If the first chapter has more goals than the 4 I've mentioned, you need to review it carefully, identify the issue, and fix it. Now, what makes a great first chapter? First, put yourself in the shoes of your main character and choose only the key events that matter. The first chapter shouldn't be a detailed explanation of the fantasy world where the characters live. The chapter's focus should be on the main character and events closely related to the main conflict of the story, along with moments that affect the character deeply. Second, make sure the first two lines are impactful and thought-provoking. When starting any story, I ask myself, how can I make the reader think? In many cases, I begin my stories with a question or a statement that sparks curiosity in the reader's mind. Don't dwell too long on the first sentence, because you'll likely return to it multiple times as you refine your work. Third, describe the main character's starting point. The hero's life at the end of the story should be drastically different from the beginning. If your story is about a failure who becomes successful, start from the depths of that failure in the first chapter. If the plot is about two lovers who reunite, show the widest possible gap between them in the beginning. In every work you write, begin with the opposite of where your character will end up. Fourth, drop a bombshell on the main character to grab the reader's attention and completely flip their world. Whether it's turning a pampered heir into a poor, amnesiac stranger in a foreign land, or from a top university student to a careless failure, or from an ordinary person to someone with superpowers. In summary, don't end the first chapter without showing that the hero's life will never be the same. Fifth, be creative. Know how to craft a scene that makes the reader sit on the edge of their seat, eager to know what happens next. Sixth, give a subtle hint about the main conflict. This is important during the planning stage. If you know the conflict, you can drop hints about it. For example, if the conflict in a Lauder story is about getting an acquittal for a guilty defendant to save his kidnapped daughter, then in the first chapter, show a moment between the father and daughter that makes the reader think, something bad is going to happen to her. Maybe the lawyer rejects cases from multiple criminals, hinting at his principles. Or, if he's a failed lawyer, you could show him failing in court. The point is, you need to give a glimpse of the conflict. Seventh, close the chapter with a line that makes the reader want more. Don't end it without some mystery or suspense. If the chapter ends with the hero simply going home to sleep without mentioning the shadows that trailed him all night, don't expect the reader to move on to chapter 2. If the chapter ends with the hero defusing a bomb and the problem being resolved, or without hinting that the mafia boss saw him and decided to catch him, you can forget about the reader finishing your book. Use this trick in every chapter, not just the first. Finally, in my opinion, the first and last chapters are the most important in any literary work. The first chapter makes the reader continue the book, and the last chapter encourages them to read your future works. So, review both chapters carefully, show them to a specialist, and remember that many times, I've continued reading a book just because of a great first chapter, even if I didn't like the rest of the story. But I've never finished a book, no matter how good it is, if the first chapter couldn't capture my attention. Be smart and treat your book like a gem. It needs to be presented in the best way possible. Don't treat it as just a way to make money or gain fame. Yes, many writers don't deserve the title of human, but there are also many respectable writers who have earned their readers' respect. Try to be in that category and put your effort and time into the book before presenting it to the world. We've come to the end of today's video. I'll be waiting for your comments. See you next week with a new video. Thank you for watching.